Here's your story, Temi. She moved before she thought about it. Stuffed 3 dresses, her university certificate, and a phone with a new SIM card into a carry-on bag, and walked out of the Abuja compound at 4:47 in the morning while her father's guards were changing shift. That was how Adaeze Okonkwo disappeared. She did not leave a note. She did not say goodbye. She did not look back at the iron gates, the manicured hedges, or the house that had been built to impress people her father needed to impress. She got into a taxi, then a bus, then a plane. Lagos to Dubai to Seoul, and somewhere over the Arabian Sea, she opened the passport she had quietly obtained under her mother's maiden name 18 months before she ever admitted to herself that she was actually going to use it. The name on it read, Ada Nwosu. She pressed her thumb against the photograph, exhaled slowly, and allowed herself, for the first time in 26 years, to feel something close to possible. Seoul received her the way a city receives everyone who arrives running from something, with complete indifference. No one knew her father's face on these streets. No one had seen the magazine profiles with her standing beside him in Aso OK at fundraising galas. Practiced smile, practiced posture, practiced absence of self. No one here called her Senator Okonkwo's daughter. No one here called her anything at all. She stood outside Incheon Airport in the October cold, dragging her carry-on across concrete, and felt the wind cut through her thin jacket. She had 47,000 naira, $300, and an address for a guest house in Mapogu that a woman from an online forum had recommended. She had no job, no Korean beyond what a language app had given her in 2 months of secret practice, no plan that extended beyond the next 48 hours. She was terrified, and underneath the terror, alive in a way that frightened her even more, was something she could only describe as relief. The guest house was small and smelled like instant ramyun and pine sol. The woman who ran it, Mrs. Jang, was 62 and communicated primarily through a combination of forceful gestures and a translation app she held up to Ada's face with the confidence of someone who had done this many times. She pointed to the house rules laminated on the wall. She pointed to the shared bathroom. She held up 3 fingers, which Ada took to mean 3,001 for extra towels, and she nodded without understanding. That first night, Ada sat on the narrow bed, pulled her knees to her chest, and called her best friend Chisholm back in Lagos. Not her father, not her aunt, Chisholm. "Tell me you didn't," Chisholm said, before Ada had said anything beyond hello. "I did." Silence. Then, "Where are you?" "Seoul." "Ada." Another silence, longer. "Your father is going to—" "I know. He's already called me twice today." "I know, Chi. I know." Her voice dropped into something quieter. "Tell him I'm safe. Don't tell him where. Tell him I just need... Please. Just give me time." Chisholm exhaled. "He's going to find you." "Not yet," Ada said. "Not yet." She found work the way survival finds a way. Imperfectly, laterally, through connections of connections. A Nigerian woman named Funke, who had lived in Seoul for 9 years, ran an informal community of West African expatriates. And it was through Funke's network that Ada landed a job at a small translation support company in Mapo, helping with English language client correspondence. The pay was modest. The hours were long. The work required her to think precisely and completely, which was, she discovered, exactly what she needed. In precision, there was no room to spiral. She moved out of the guest house after 6 weeks and into a small 1-room apartment in Hongdae. She bought a second-hand coat from a street stall. She learned where the affordable markets were. She opened a local bank account. She ate alone most evenings, at the Pojang matcha stalls near her building, where the Ajosi who ran the stall recognized her after the 3rd visit and started pouring her makjoli without being asked. She was building a life, an actual, unglamorous, exhausting, dimension-having life. And it struck her sometimes, in the middle of the most ordinary moments, folding laundry, waiting for the subway, reading a menu, that she had never done this before. Chosen a meal for herself without thinking about optics. Taken a route because she liked it, not because it was approved. Been bored or tired or hungry without those feelings belonging to someone's schedule. She had been managed. Her whole life, she had been managed. Her father was a senator, yes, but he was also a man who understood that power was inherited and that daughters were inheritance. Ada had been tutored in economics, law, and public speaking before she was 15. She had attended the right school, worn the right things, appeared at the right functions. At 23, he had arranged an introduction to the son of a retired governor. At 25, he had begun floating her name in conversations about the upcoming state assembly seat, which was, she understood, his idea of a compliment. She had never been asked, not once, not what she wanted to study or where she wanted to live or whom she wanted to love. These were not questions that occurred to him, not because he was cruel, but because the life he was building was complete in his mind, and she was already in it. She had tried to talk to him once, really talk. She remembered sitting across from him in his study while he reviewed documents, and she had said, "Daddy, I don't want to go into politics." He had looked up from his papers. He had looked at her for a long, quiet moment, and then he had said, "Get some rest, Ada. The Abuja trip is early." And he had looked back down. She had not tried again. She met J1 in February, 4 months after she arrived, at a community language exchange event in a cafe in Sinchon. He was there because he wanted to improve his English for a job application. She was there because Funke had insisted she get out of her apartment on weekends. He was not what she noticed first. What she noticed first was that he was the only person at the table who seemed genuinely nervous. His fingers turning a pen over and over, stopping only when it was his turn to speak, at which point the nervousness disappeared entirely and he became, suddenly, articulate and specific and a little funny. She thought, interesting. He noticed her because she laughed at something he said about the Seoul subway that no one else at the table laughed at. And he looked over, and she gave him a small apologetic shrug, and he smiled. His name was Park Jae-won. He was 30, a civil engineer with a dry wit and a habit of asking questions that went sideways from where you expected them to go. He asked her that first evening, not what she did, but what she liked to do, and she had paused, because the answer was not immediately available to her. She had to search for it. "I like walking," she said finally, "to places I don't know yet." "Me too," he said, "though I usually end up taking photos of drainage infrastructure." She laughed again. He asked if she wanted another Americano. They texted for 2 weeks before he asked her for dinner. They had dinner 3 times before he held her hand walking through Bukchon. They walked through Bukchon 4 times before she kissed him on a stone staircase in the old quarter, while sleet came down sideways, and neither of them moved to stop it. He knew her as Aiden Wosu, a Nigerian woman working in Mapo, making her way. He did not know about the compound in Abuja. He did not know about the senator. He did not know about the arranged future she had walked away from. And for months, this felt not like deception, but like excavation, as if the person she was with him was someone she had been digging toward her whole life and was only now arriving at. She told him things she had never told anyone, not the facts of her escape, not yet, but the texture of the person she had been before. She told him about the feeling of performing at family events, about the particular exhaustion of being someone's symbol. He listened in the way he did everything, with focused quietness, not rushing to fill the silences. One evening, sitting on the floor of her apartment with takeout containers between them, he said, "You seem like someone who spent a long time being observed." She looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Like you learned how to exist under a camera that wasn't there." He said it without accusation, a simple fact. "You're getting better at forgetting the camera." Her chest tightened in a way she had no name for. She looked at her hands. "Is it obvious?" "Only to someone paying attention," he said quietly. And then, even more quietly, "I pay attention to you." She fell in love with him in that moment. She did not say it for another 3 weeks, and when she did, she said it in Igbo first by accident, and then in English, and he said it back in Korean and then in English, and they sat with the 4 languages between them like something neither of them had planned for, and both of them had wanted. Her father found her in April. She did not know how at first. She came home from work on a Tuesday evening to find a black SUV parked outside her building, the kind that did not exist in Hongdae, the kind that belonged to a different category of person, and her stomach dropped before her brain caught up. He was sitting in her apartment. He had spoken to her landlord. He had spoken to her landlord in the voice that got things done, and her landlord had let him in, and now Senator Chukwuemeka Okonkwo was sitting in her small one-room Hongdae apartment in an Agbada that cost more than 3 months of her rent, looking at the life she had built with an expression she could not read. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, then she stepped inside. "Daddy." "Sit down, Ada. This is my apartment." "Sit down." She sat, not because he commanded it, because her legs asked her to. He looked around the room, the second-hand furniture, the language books stacked on the windowsill, the photo of her and Jaewon at Namsan pinned above her desk. His face gave nothing away. He was a politician. His face almost never gave anything away. "Do you know what you have done?" he said, and his voice was low and controlled in the way that meant he was working very hard to keep it that way. 6 months. 6 months, Ada. No call, no letter. Your aunt thought you were dead. I had people looking for you across 3 continents. You have humiliated this family in front of... I left, she said. Her voice was steadier than she expected. I didn't disappear. I left. Those are not the same thing. He looked at her sharply. Do not speak to me as if I am one of your... What? Friends? She felt something rising in her, something that had been rising quietly for 6 months and had, it turned out, enough pressure behind it to hold its own. I have those now. Friends I chose, a job I applied for, an apartment I pay for by myself, a life I... Her voice caught and she steadied it. A life I actually chose. He was quiet. The silence in the apartment was dense. Come home, he said. We will not speak of this to anyone. I have managed the story. 6 months abroad for health recovery. No one needs to... Stop! She stood up. Stop managing it. Stop managing me. Her eyes were wet and she did not look away. I am not a story you can manage, Daddy. I am your daughter. Do you even... Have you ever asked me, once, what I actually want? What you want. He repeated it like she had said something naive. Ada, what you want is a luxury for people who have not been given what we have been given. Responsibility is not... I don't want your responsibility. Her voice broke clean through the steadiness. I want my life, the one I've been building, here. I want the job that is mine, and the friends who are mine, and the man who loves me for... She stopped. His eyes moved to the photo above her desk, to Jaewon's face. The silence changed shape. Ada. The command in his voice was quieter now, more dangerous in a different way. His name is Jaewon, she said. He is a good person. He doesn't know who you are, and that is the reason he knows who I am. She watched her father's face. For the first time in her life, she watched it do something she had not seen it do before. It cracked, just slightly, at the corner of his jaw, the way a wall cracks before it decides whether to hold or give. He looked at the photo for a long time. He doesn't know, he said slowly, who you are. He knows everything about who I am, she said. He just doesn't know your name. Another silence, longer this time. You will have to tell him, her father said. Not as a command, something else. I know. Her voice was quiet. I was going to, before you got here. He exhaled, set his hands on his knees, looked out the small window at the grey Seoul skyline. He looked, in that moment, like a man who had arrived at a place he had not expected the road to go, and was standing in it, adjusting. I looked for you for 6 months, he said. His voice had changed. The authority was still there, but underneath it, something she had almost never heard from him. I looked for you every day. She sat back down. Her knees were shaking very slightly. I know. I was afraid. He said the word like it cost him. That something had happened, that I hadn't... He stopped. He cleared his throat. He was a senator and he had run out of words. You should have told me that you were... I tried to, she said softly. You told me to get some rest. The silence after that was the quietest silence there had ever been in the room. He did not respond right away. He looked at his hands for a long time. Then he looked at her, and for a moment she saw him without the agbada and the title, and the 40 years of learned authority, and he was just a man sitting in his daughter's small apartment in a foreign city, understanding slowly that he had missed something he could not go back and unhide. "I would like to meet him," he said. She blinked. "What?" "The man, in the photograph." His voice was not warm. It was not effusive. But it was something she had never expected it to be. Asking, "If you are willing." She looked at him for a long moment. Her father, who had never asked her anything, was asking her something. It was not an apology. It was not a transformation. He was 61 years old, and he had been who he was for longer than she had been alive. And they both knew that what was between them would take a long time and many more rooms like this one to find its way through. But it was a beginning. "I'll call him," she said. "Give me an hour." She stepped out onto a small balcony to make the call, pulling her coat around her against the April chill. Down below, Seoul moved in its relentless, indifferent, generous way. People crossing at crosswalks, streetlights just beginning to glow as the sky went grey, the sound of a pajangmacha ajosi pulling back his stall tarp 2 buildings over. Jaewon picked up on the second ring. "Ada, is everything—" "I need to tell you something," she said. "About who I am. All of it. And then I need you to come over." A beat. His voice when it came was steady. "I'm already on my way." She stayed on the balcony a moment longer after the call ended. Below her, the city moved. Inside her, the 2 versions of herself, the senator's daughter she had been and the woman she had become, sat side by side for the first time without fighting for the same space. She had run from who she was. He had fallen in love with who she became. And now, perhaps, she would find out if she could hold both. Afro K Soul Stories, where every woman finds